He locked her in the cellar, and she sang for him in the dark. They said the cellar had no light, no windows, no cracks where the air could slip in, and yet her voice carried through the beams of the house above like smoke curling through broken boards. He had locked her down there, not for days, but for weeks, and the strange thing, the thing that unsettled even him, was not her screams, not her weeping, not her pounding fists on the wood. It was the singing. At first it was faint, fragile, like a child humming to herself in the corner. A single trembling note that drifted upward in the night when the house was silent. He thought it would stop after a day, two at most, when her throat gave out from thirst and the air thinned with her sobbing. But it didn't stop. Every evening, just as he sat in his chair above, he would hear it again, the same lullabies, the same soft melody that she once sang before he had ever touched the key that locked the door. It was almost sweet, almost gentle, except that it came from a place so black and airless that the sweetness felt wrong. It was like hearing a cradle song echoing from a coffin. He told himself she sang to keep herself sane. That was all, just her mind clinging to whatever thread it could. But the longer it went on, the less human it began to sound. Some nights she sang his name, slowly, softly, drawing it out into the tune, bending the syllables until they stretched like wax dripping in candlelight. Other nights, the words twisted. He couldn't make them out at first, just murmured verses beneath the hum. When he pressed his ear to the floorboards above the cellar, he could swear the lyrics were no longer lullabies, but something older. Not prayers. Prayers had warmth, pleading, desperation. These words sounded like offerings. He stopped sleeping. He stopped eating. He would sit there above her in the dark with the lamp turned low, listening to her voice rise and fall, sometimes breaking, sometimes lifting into a tone so high and piercing that the hairs on his arms stood up. And then came the night he heard two voices. Not in harmony, not echo, two distinct tones, hers and something else that answered her from the blackness below. He froze, his breath locked in his chest. The melody shifted into something he had never heard before, not any song she had sung in her life. The second voice joined in lower, rasping, carrying the weight of stone dragged across the ground. Still she sang on, as if she wasn't trapped, as if she wasn't afraid, as if she wasn't alone down there. He didn't open the door. Not that night, not the next, not the next. He couldn't bring himself to touch the iron handle, though his hand hovered near it often. Instead, he stayed upstairs, sitting rigid in his chair as if nailed to it, staring at the floorboards beneath his feet. The wood vibrated sometimes when the second voice joined hers, and he swore he could feel the faintest hum in the soles of his shoes, as though something deep beneath the earth itself was answering her. Days blurred. He stopped going into town. His lantern oil ran low, so the house was nearly as dark as the cellar, except for the weak daylight that crept through the curtains. He didn't eat more than scraps. He barely drank. His entire world shrank to that one sound. Her songs changed again. They became clearer, clearer. Words formed that were no longer nonsense. Words that should not have been known to her. He had locked her away because of her voice, because he thought if he silenced her, he could keep her, control her, own the only thing about her he truly wanted. But now that voice was no longer his. It didn't even sound like hers. One night he woke to silence. No singing, no whispers, only the heavy black stillness pressing down on the house. For a moment, he felt relief so sharp it nearly made him cry. He thought it was over. Then, 3 knocks, from beneath him, measured, steady, not desperate, as if the one below wanted to remind him, I am still here. The cellar door loomed at the end of the hallway, swollen with damp, its iron handle rusted with age. He pressed his palm against it and felt the vibration. She was humming still, and the wood itself seemed to breathe. He turned the key. The lock clicked, loud as thunder. For a moment, silence followed. No pacing, no hum. The air seemed to swell with expectation. He opened the door an inch. The smell rolled out, wet stone, mildew, and something metallic beneath, like rust, like blood. He held the lantern high, its light reaching only the first 3 steps before the black swallowed it whole. Sing for me, he whispered, voice cracking. He didn't know why he said it. Maybe he needed to prove it was still her. Maybe he wanted to hear her voice, the one he remembered, before everything had shifted into nightmare. And she did sing, but not from below. From behind him, he whirled, lantern shaking, and for an instant he thought he saw her at the end of the hall. The shape of her, thin and pale, lips parted as the song curled out of her throat. But when he blinked, the hallway was empty. The cellar behind him groaned. Not the door, the cellar itself. The stone walls seemed to exhale. He felt the draft on his face damp and cool, as though the darkness below had leaned forward to smell him. Her voice rose again, this time from everywhere, from the cellar, from the rafters, from the hollow spaces between the walls. The song layered itself into chords, dissonant and wrong, until he clutched at his ears and staggered. "Come down," she sang. "You locked me in. You should be with me." The lantern flickered, and the flame died. He was alone in the dark, and yet not alone, because he heard her moving now, not beneath, not behind, but around, breathing, singing, humming. The house itself seemed to carry her voice like a vessel, every beam and board hollowing into a throat. He pressed himself against the cellar door, heart hammering, the cold stone at his back. And as he stood there shaking, he realized the most terrifying thing of all. The voice wasn't coming from the cellar anymore. It was coming from the house. He stumbled blindly through the dark walls, trembling with the vibration of her voice. Every step he took, the boards beneath his feet hummed as though she were inside the wood, inside the very marrow of the house. He tried to run for the door, but the hallway stretched impossibly long, the shape of the house folding in on itself. Then her song stopped. The silence was so sudden it crushed his lungs. From the cellar stairwell behind him came a sound, a single soft footstep, bare against stone. He froze. Another step followed, closer, slow, deliberate. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't scream. And then, right against his ear, her voice whispered, "You shouldn't have left me alone." The house swallowed him. Neighbors who came weeks later said the windows were black, curtains drawn, doors sealed tight. When they finally forced their way in, the rooms were silent. No trace of him, no trace of her. Only the faintest sound when the wind moved through the rafters, a song. Low and steady, and if you listened too long, you swore you could hear two voices twined together in the dark.